Johnson.
Here.
Melton.
Here.
Rowe.
Here.
Bagley.
Here.
Harding. Mr. President.
Here. Please rise for the pledge and opening remarks by Councilmember Hug.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated.
Mayor, welcome. It's always good to see you. Well, along with being National Cheesecake Day, which in my book is every day, it's also National Whistleblower Day. National Whistleblower Day commemorates the day our founding fathers recognized the need to protect those who report corruption when they see it. The day reminds us to honor and support the people who speak up about fraud, abuse, or waste. Interestingly enough, it was a unanimous resolution was enacted by the Continental Congress on July 30th, 1778, by honoring Lieutenant Richard Marvin, Midshipman Samuel Shaw, and 8 other sailors who reported abuse against British prisoners by Commodore Hopkins. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
An affidavit of publication is on file for the pre-council and city council meeting, and a current copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted in a white binder on the east wall of legislative chambers.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Omaha City Council. We appreciate having you here, and we want to welcome some special guests here in a minute. First, I will say, make sure you have your cell phones turned to vibrate, or at least turn them, or maybe even turn them off. And if you have a difficult time hearing the proceedings today, you may request a listening device with our meeting clerk here to my left, and there's also a closed captioning screen in the back of the room if you need it. With that, council members, without objection, we're going to move up number 43 on our agenda and recognize Mayor Stoddard and recognize our delegation here from Carlentini that approves an item with a sister city agreement between our 2 cities. And then we'd be honored to hear from Mayor Stefio and their city council president or anyone else who'd like to provide some remarks today. So Mayor Stoddard, the floor is yours.
Well, good afternoon, President Festerson and City Council members. It is an honor. Do I need to say my address today?
I think you're okay.
Okay. All right, good. It's really an honor today to welcome Carlentini Mayor Giuseppe Stefio and his delegation back to Omaha and into the legislative chamber today. Mayor Stefio, thank you for being here today. Thank you. I just told him that my Italian is not any better than it was in 2021, and he told me my English is not any better either. So we're kind of on the same level here. But in 2021, Mayor Stefio and I signed a friendship agreement, creating opportunities for cultural, educational, and business partnerships and exchanges. In 2022, I led an Omaha delegation to Carlentini, Sicily, where we met with leaders in government and education to further pursue a sister city designation. We are now ready to finalize the agreement at a ceremony tomorrow afternoon celebrating our global friendship. Carlentini and Omaha have a century-old ties and history of family, faith, culture, and tradition. The first Carlentini immigrants arrived in Omaha over 100 years ago to work on the railroad, the new railroad at that time. They brought a strong work ethic, religious faith, dedication to family, and a spirit of community to their homes in Omaha, traits still evident today. For several years, descendants of those first immigrants and the Omaha Sister City Association have worked to finalize our Sister City agreement. So thank you to Sister Cities Board and their volunteers. It is my privilege to serve as the honorary chair of the Omaha Sister City Association and recommend today approval of this resolution. Omaha is very proud of our strong ties to Carlentini, and we look forward to many, many years of new friends and new friendships. Thank you all.
Thank you. Are there other proponents that want to speak, or maybe someone from the delegation? Steve.
I'm Steve Yurtis, president of the Omaha Sister City Association, and I too urge the council to support this resolution. You may ask, well, why do we need a resolution of sisterhood when we already have such a strong tradition of connections between the Italians who settled in Omaha and Carlentini. Well, from the sister cities perspective, this is an opportunity to expand that and share the wonderful Italian culture that those of us who are not Italian can experience. And similarly, amazingly are some people in Carlentini who don't have any descendants here in Omaha. And so we'd like to invite them here as well. So it is a wonderful fit for the city of Omaha, and I urge you to support it. I would also like, if I could, to have the delegation from Carlentini, including the president of their city council, to please stand. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents that want to speak to number 43?
Grazie Sindaco Stotter. Grazie a questo Parlamento cittadino di una delle città più importanti degli Stati Uniti d'America. Grazie alla città di Omaha. Oggi per la mia città, per la mia piccola città, viene scritta una pagina storica. Il ricordo di molti miei concittadini che si trasferirono dalla mia città alla fine del 1800 in questa città e hanno trovato una seconda loro casa. Oggi voi state rendendo omaggio ai sacrifici e alla memoria di coloro i quali sono venuti qua ad Omaha per cercare una vita migliore e voi, insieme alla vostra città, alla vostra comunità, avete reso questo sogno possibile per i miei concittadini. Quindi grazie ancora.
Thank you to everyone to make this dream come true. Since our people from Carlentini, they came here at the end of the 1800 to build a new dream and a new life in here. And now we can claim it, and it has been possible because you allow us to be here now and write it down and make the history. So today for us is a way to make history in here. And it's such an important thing for all of us back in Italy. And we cannot say anything more than thank you from the deep of our hearts.
Grazie. E in un momento in cui spesso nel mondo vengono costruiti dei muri, oggi voi invece insieme a noi abbiamo costruito un ponte che unirà questa comunità di Omaha all'altra parte del mondo dove sta Carlentini. E sappiate una cosa, io avrò l'onore e il piacere di ricevere ancora una volta la sindaca Storter e quando verrà a Carlentini avrò l'onore di conferirgli la cittadinanza onoraria, perché non lo posso fare con tutti i cittadini di Omaha, ma nel segno e in modo simbolico significa che ogni singolo cittadino di Omaha possa sentirsi anche cittadino di Carlentini. Grazie ancora di vero cuore.
So we are in an age while we are always building walls, but now we are going to build a bridge within two populations, Sicily and Omaha in Nebraska. For us here, Omaha is one of the most important cities in the United States, and we are always welcome you all, and you are always welcome to come, and you are going to be an honorary resident in Sicily. And this we could do in Carlentini. We could do this for all of you, but of course we can only do with one. You are welcome anytime you want to come back. It's going to be a pleasure.
And I want to come back. Yeah.
Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you.
Grazie.
Are there any other proponents that want to speak to number 43?
Good afternoon. My name is Sherry Kanger, and I am a Ruma. I am the great-great-granddaughter of Lucia Shishilo, and she was somebody who came from Carlentini for a better life here in Omaha. So I know how important this relationship is from a historical standpoint and from a family relationship as well. I actually live at my grandfather's house at 2525 South 46th Avenue. And a lot of the relationships that have been ongoing for over 100 years now are still carrying on, and the next generation needs to know the stories of our ancestors. So I've been involved in projects to help promote Italian heritage here in Omaha and preserve the Italian legacy that first came to Omaha in the early 1900s. So I just wanted to tell you how important this is to a number of people worldwide, that this resolution be passed and Carlentini and Omaha remain a tightly connected community well into the future.
Well said. Thanks for being
Thank
here.
you.
I'll have to make sure you're involved in the signing ceremony. Any other proponents on this item? Seeing none, any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing's closed.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve. And before we approve this 7-0, I want to say we look forward to participating in your events this week with the signing ceremony and the dinner, and look forward to being a great partner with your city. Roll call.
Hug.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
Okay. Yeah, wait a minute.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
Item 6, to consider a Class C liquor license for the Dandelion located at 15475 Ruggles Street, Suite 108.
Council members, this item was postponed for more time at our last meeting. I'll now take proponents. Number 6.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the council. My name is David Houghton at 2804 South 87th Ave. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, Corrigan Enterprises, LLC, doing business as the Dandelion. My client would like to apologize to the council with regard to the mix-up and hope that they didn't cause any inconvenience for the members of the council. They had an old email that they were using. This new concept bar will be located at 15475 Ruggles Street in the space that was formerly Retro Rewind. The concept will change from a nightclub to a lounge catering to an adult upscale patron. The hours of operation will be noon to midnight Monday through Thursday, noon to 2 a.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 10 p.m. on Sundays. If the council has any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Okay, thank you. Any other proponents on number 6? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Move the approval.
There's a motion and a second to approve. Roll call.
Hug. Johnson. Melton.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 7, to consider a Class C liquor license for Board and Brush located at 6016 Maple Street.
Public hearing and vote on number 7 is today. We have the proponent by Zoom. Ms. Price will get you off mute here in a second. Okay, try that.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon, President Festerson and members of the City Council. My name is Miranda Price. I am looking to get a liquor license at 6016 Maple Street for a Board and Brush creative studio. Formerly was the Overflow Lounge that has been closed for quite a few years. Our studio is going to be doing somewhat of a paint and sip, except it's going to be with boards where people can DIY their own projects. The liquor license is just requirement from the franchise, and we will just be serving just to the people attending the classes. The hours we're going to be doing the classes we're going to start with just Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, as much of a weekend thing as can be, and see where it goes from there. That's everything. Any questions from anyone?
Thank you. So it is a franchise, right? Is that what you're speaking to?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yep.
First one in Omaha, right?
Correct. First one in Nebraska.
All right. Well, we're going to welcome you to Benson. I think it'll be a nice addition there next, not too far down from the community center, right?
Correct. Yep. And I've been on the neighborhood board, Benson Neighborhood Association board for 4 years, and I know that we're always excited to see new businesses come into Benson, so I'm excited to be part of it on the other side.
Yeah, great. I was going to recommend you get involved with the Business Improvement District there in the Creative District, but it sounds like you are.
Yes, yes.
All right, excellent. Are there any other proponents on number 7? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. There's a motion to approve in a second. Roll call.
Hug. Johnson. Melton. Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Item 8, to consider a Class I liquor license for Champagne Lanes and Ghost Donkey located at 910-920 Harney Street.
Public hearing and vote on number 8 is today. Proponents, please. I think we have Ms. O'Neill by Zoom.
Hello.
Hello.
So yes, we're looking to seek a liquor license for Champagne Lanes Ghost Donkey. It's a flagship restaurant group concept originating in Arizona, and we would like to bring one to Omaha, Nebraska, located across from the Old Market.
Thank you. And Rebecca, just your address for the record?
1301 Jones Street is my current address, and then 8th and Farnham is the address for the concept.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Any other proponents that want to speak today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Ms. Melton, you're recognized.
Yes, thank you. I was actually contacted by one of the residents in the building, in your building that lives there. And there was apparently there's a whole group of residents there that can't wait for you to open. And they called and asked me if you knew when your opening date would be, if I could ask that question today and relay that back.
Absolutely. We're so excited to open. We're shooting for the 2nd or 3rd week of September. My whole team did just train out in Arizona, and we're bringing a bunch of really fun ideas from that area over. So we're very much looking forward to catering to our community.
Well, if you want to do a little test opening, there's a bunch of residents that live in the building that I'm sure would volunteer to do it for you before you open. So
I think we would really enjoy that.
Contact me if you want. They're a bunch of fun people, and they said, please vote for it. And they literally can't wait for you to open. So I think you've got customers waiting already.
Exciting to hear. Thank you so much.
Nothing further.
No further lights. Is there a motion? And just a reminder, this requires a Rule 7. Yep. Okay, motion and a second to approve and waive Rule 7. No further lights. Roll call.
Hug. Johnson. Melton. Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 9, to consider an addition liquor license application for Scissors and Scotch to add an indoor area to their location at 2835 South 170th Plaza, Suite 212.
Public hearing and vote on number 9 is today. Proponents, please. Do we have it them by Zoom as well? Okay, Dylan, try that.
Good afternoon, Dylan Pachasa, 18315 Grant Street, Elkhorn, Nebraska, 68022. Just looking to add a 10 by 20 addition to our current liquor license bar area.
Okay, thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Motion and a second to approve. Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Price, how are you today? Can you hear me?
Are you talking? Yeah, Mr. Pachasa, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought, yeah, I misread your name there on the screen. How are you?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Good. Can you give me a day in the life of what your business looks like and what you'll be doing there and your hours of operation?
Yes, so Scissors and Scotch is the name of the business. We are a men's grooming place, so we have 16 styling chairs. I have barbers, I have cosmetologists, and we just give the full grooming experience to men. We have different men haircuts, beard trims, facial hair sculpts, and then every gentleman that comes in and gets a haircut can also go and get a free drink in our bar. And our hours are, we're open every day of the week at my Legacy location. And the bar is completely separate than the haircut area due to the barber board expectations. So we just moved our front desk and knocked out a wall and then just expanded just a little bit in our bar area to make it more convenient for people that come in there.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you. There is a motion and a second to approve. No further lights. Roll call.
Hug. Johnson. Melton. Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 10, to consider a special designated liquor license application for Crescent Moon Ale House located at 3578 Farnham Street for an outdoor event on September 27th and 28th from noon to midnight with music ending at midnight each night.
Public hearing and vote on number 10 is today. Proponents, please.
Yes, Candace Gladwin, 1504 North 113th Plaza, Omaha 68154. And I'm the event coordinator there. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponents?
Donnie R. Johnson, the Johnson Equestrian Foundation, North Omaha Concerned Citizen Foundation, 4928 North 52nd Street, and the City Council of Omaha, Nebraska. We'd like to share some thoughts about all this liquor that's been approved today for these liquor licenses. These young folks here want to go study in the African continent and bring some gold back so we can buy the international or First National Bank down there. Do you recommend, since my generation, we studied under the Cherokee and Sam Houston, so smoking or liquor, which one do you think is more important to the young folks? To get them some money so they can go to South Africa or West Africa or East Africa? And then we're going to buy that First National Bank building down there next to, on the, what,
all right, Donnie,
Hilton Hotel.
Keep your remarks to this liquor license at the Crescent Ale Moon House, right?
Yeah, but every week I come here, I see all these liquor licenses being passed. I'm saying to myself, when are they going to get around to the medical marijuana?
Any other opponents to number 10? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Bagley, you're recognized.
Mr. President. Candace, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for coming down, and I apologize I didn't get a hold of you before today, but this is, I think, the 23rd annual
Correct.
Oktoberfest.
Correct.
And I've enjoyed it the last several years that I've gone, and your music's going to go till midnight, correct?
Correct.
And how many bands you got playing?
We have just one on Friday, Barry Boyce, and then Saturday, Polka Express in the afternoon, and then Barry Boyce rounds it out again.
And if the Fighting Irish and Notre Dame or the Huskers are playing that night, you'll have TVs in the tents in the back, I'm
We
guessing?
usually have a projection screen underneath the
Okay.
tent somewhere, and then obviously in all the bars inside.
Yeah, you guys are you run a great event. I've enjoyed going to that, and I'll enjoy
thank
going to it again this year. I'll be glad to make the motion. This is in Blackstone, in the heart of my district, in the Cottonwood. People drive up there, they can see the progress that is going on every day. So I wish you the best of luck, and I'll look forward to seeing you at the end of September, and I'm glad to make a motion for this today. Thanks.
Thank you.
There's a motion to approve in a second. No further lights. Roll call.
Hug. Johnson. Melton. Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 11, a resolution to approve the preliminary plat for Boyd's Addition, Replat 5, located at 3030 Sprague Street. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing and vote on number 11 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Second.
Motion to approve in a second. Roll call.
Hug. Johnson. Melton. Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 12, an ordinance to rezone property located at 7096 Binney Street from R4 District to R5 District. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend denial of rezoning to R6 and approval of rezoning to R5.
Public hearing and vote on number 12 is today. Proponents, please.
Hi, Matt Bates, 7210 Blondo Street. It's this home is right north of 72nd and Maple by a bunch of commercial spots, and it's a single-family home that can be converted to a duplex. We want to do a triplex, but just a duplex now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other proponents on number 12? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Second.
Motion is second to approve. Roll call.
Hug. Johnson. Melton. Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 13, an ordinance to rezone property located at 7059 Dodge Street from GC District to CC District. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing and vote on number 13 is today. Proponents, please.
Jim Carson on behalf of TFL Inc., 4611 South 96th Street in Omaha. This matter comes up as discussions between TFL for the development of the southeast corner of 72nd Dodge Street, and in conjunction with recommendation of the City Planning Department, we've applied to downzone the property from general commercial to community commercial. The ACI overlay will remain intact. I believe it's a win for the city.
Okay, thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents?
Donnie R. Johnson, the Johnson Equestrian Foundation, and North Omaha Concerned Citizen Foundation. I realize most of you councilmen was in elementary school when they had the debate here downtown about the Hilton and changing that street from the 16th and blocking it. Well, that was a golden opportunity for us now because we're prepared to buy the Hilton Hotel and that First National Bank.
Donnie, this is a rezoning at 70th and 72nd and Dodge.
Yeah, they had to rezone that because you was too young then when they rezoned the 16th Street.
Yeah,
I understand that, but that's okay. We'll bring you up to
this
code.
case, please, or else you're off topic.
Okay.
All right. Any other opponents to number 13?
Larry Shore, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. First of all, Mr. Festerson, I'm opposed to the way you treat Donnie differently than you treat me. Enough of that. But didn't we hear something about this item 2 weeks ago, was it? When we had the most people in this chambers that I've ever seen opposing this development. Is this the same one that involves the Mega Saver? When I went onto the website, it looks to me like it is, but you just say nothing on the website currently about that. I don't know where you sit with that, whether you've scrapped that idea and sent them completely down to the state for their liquor license or not. I find it strange that you didn't mention it on today's agenda item. But I've driven through that area a couple of times. Of course, it is very closely related to Mr. Morgan's real estate company. And it looks like you've already started tearing up the street, but we haven't had a vote on it yet. And that seems to be the typical run of affairs in this council with development. I think there's a lot of citizens there that are worried about a couple of really nice homes that are probably going to get taken. And so I'd like a little more discussion on this and whether it is still related to the Mega Saver or not. And based on those citizens' opposition last 2 weeks ago, I think, there must have been at least 20 citizens. And you broke the rules there because you let most every one of them run on and on and on. And quite often, you cut me off by this time, if not earlier. And that, again, is different treatment of different people for different reasons. So I'd like to know why you let so many people go way past their time 2 weeks ago. Thank you.
Any other opponents to number 13? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Mr. Bagley, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mr. President. Mr. Fansel, a couple questions for you, please.
Yep, Dave Fansel, City Planning.
Dave, changing this is proposed today from GC to CC. Just to be crystal clear, That would have no impact whatsoever on Mega Saver at 7059 Dodge Street moving forward. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. And also, is this a benefit to the city to switch this from GC to CC? And if it is, why?
Yeah, so I'd say it's more of a probably benefit to the surrounding neighborhood. GC zoning is a little more intense than CC zoning, and so the down zoning of this will help. It's more the uses that are allowed in the CC community commercial zoning district are more of the businesses that seem to be in the neighborhood. So by down zoning this, if Mega Saver for some reason doesn't happen or someday leaves that site, then the site would be zone CC for uses that are more typical of that neighborhood.
Okay, thanks, Dave.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mr. President.
Thanks. I agree with that analysis. I was not supportive, and I am not supportive of this use at this intersection for the reasons we discussed last week, previous weeks about the liquor license when it came, and actually was not recommended to be approved 4-3. But that is a separate item from this rezoning that must now go to the State Liquor Commission. That has not been scheduled yet. We believe that'll be sometime in September for disposition by, ultimate disposition by the State Liquor Commission. But what's before us today is the rezoning. And I agree with Mr. Begley's and Mr. Fanslaw's analysis there that even though I don't support this use, it is of benefit to approve this rezoning, to downzone this property. In the instance a liquor license is not approved, there is still benefit to doing that. If this rezoning was not approved, it doesn't prevent that from happening either. So that's the situation we're in. Even though I begrudgingly will support this rezoning today, it's not because I've had a change of heart. I still don't support the use at this location, but that's the circumstance we find ourselves in. Ms. Melton, you're recognized.
Thank you. And I'd just like to concur with you. I mean, Claire, I don't like the use here either, but this city council, that's not our job. As long as it fits in the zoning, in the current zoning, they can build the Mega Saver. So whether we vote yes or no today, the Mega Saver can be built. We don't control what goes in there as long as it complies with the current zoning. I do support at least down zoning this property to a CC because it'll prevent maybe some other uses that we wouldn't like in the future. So that's why I'm supporting this as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too would like to share my concerns that I had last week. They have not changed. But the issue in front of us today is a different matter. So I'm just bringing forth or bringing to the attention of this body what my position is before voting. Thank you.
Thank you. No further lights. Is there a motion?
Move the approval.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Hug. Yes. Johnson.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Harding.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 14, an ordinance to rezone property located at 6014 South 26th Street from HI District to R4 District. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing and vote on number 14 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Second.
Motion to approve in a second. Roll call.
Hug.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Bagley.
Aye.
Harding. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 15, an ordinance to rezone property located at 2603 Y Street and 2615 Y Street from HI District to R4 District. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing and vote on number 15 is today. Proponents, please.
My name is Jesus Gomez. I like to rezone from a heavy industrial to a single-family home.
Okay.
You know, just need your permission.
And Jesus, your address just for the record?
Yeah, 2603
Okay.
White Street.
Thank you. Any other proponents on number 15? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed.
Second.
There's a motion to approve in a second. Roll call.
Hug.
Yes.
Johnson. Melton. Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
Thanks.
Item 16, an ordinance to approve a major amendment to a PUD overlay district located east of 80th and Reed Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing and vote on number 16 is today. Proponents, please.
Hi, my name is Christina Spangenberg, 2204 North 180th Avenue in Elkhorn. We are just asking for a major amendment to the PUD to construct 7 single-family attached buildings for a total of 14 units.
Okay. Thank you. Any other proponents on number 16? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Motion is second to approve. Roll call.
Hug. Johnson. Melton. Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
Thanks.
Items 17 and 18 can be considered together for property located southwest of 22nd Street and Poppleton Avenue. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Item 17, an ordinance to approve a PUR overlay district. Item 18, an ordinance to rescind the PK overlay districts.
Public hearing and vote on numbers 17 and 18 are today. Proponents, please.
Rob Woodling, Foundations Development. This will be part of, 1886 South 126th Street, Omaha, Nebraska. This will be part of a 8-unit affordable housing project for disabled seniors on right around 22nd and Poppleton. We've been fortunate enough to secure some philanthropic support as well as some ARPA funding through the state of Nebraska to build these units. Look forward to answering any questions you may have. Thank you.
Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents?
Good afternoon, City Council, Omaha, Nebraska. Donnie R. Johnson, the Johnson Equestrian Foundation, and North Omaha Concerned Citizen Foundation. You know, Mr. Frederickson, I was trying to figure something out here. On this, when I was a kid, a young guy, we see signs says 8 ton, 4 tons, not allowed.
Donnie,
Do any of these-
it's got to be the 22nd and Poppleton.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out this.
A parking overlay, right?
Yeah, the tonnage of this. Who's going to pay for if the 6 ton comes into an area that's not supposed to come? Because we have signs that says if you have 6 tons, you can't come in this area. And I don't see that in all these development. So if a truck bringing big, heavy equipment in, and it's 8 ton, and tear up the street, who's supposed to pay for that?
All right. Any other opponents to these items? Seeing none, public hearings closed. Mr. Bagley, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mr. President. Rob, good afternoon. Good to see
Good
you
afternoon.
again.
You too.
Nice to run into you at Stinson Saturday night. I told you I was really going to grill you today, but
I thought you said it was going to be softball right down the middle.
yeah, I know. I kind of lied to you a little bit.
Okay, that's fine.
No, I'm glad to be supportive of this. And do you own the apartments at the old St. Anne's location there, just to the west of this?
I do.
And how many units is that?
That's 23.
And those are affordable as well?
Correct. 18 are affordable, 5 are market rate.
Okay. I really want to thank you for the investments and the time that you're making. And as a kid going down to St. Anne's and all the ball games and spaghetti dinners and neighborhoods age and the investment that you're making in Columbus Park for disabled seniors here in the lot that's just been sitting there. It's really a great investment, and I'm glad to support this. And I guess I'll let you off the hook.
Thank you.
I lied to you a little bit, but thanks for coming down, and thanks for being at Stinson and Sonny's on Saturday night and all the work you do in the community with, I think you work with Front Porch on this as well, did you not?
Correct.
Okay. Well, this is a great investment in the revibration of Columbus Park, and this is a big part of it, so I'll be glad to make a motion to support this today. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you. There is a motion and a second to approve. No further lights. Roll call.
Hug. Johnson. Melton. Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 19, a resolution to approve a special use permit to allow large group living in the R2 district located at 8504 Douglas Street. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing and vote on number 19 is today. Proponents, please.
Hi, I'm Erin Render, 18517 Hampton Drive, Omaha 68136, and I am here representing Legato Real Estate and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed. There's a motion to approve in a second. Roll call.
Hug. Johnson. Melton.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 20, a resolution to approve a special use permit to allow large group living in the R2 district located at 10214 Elm Street. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. B is communication in opposition.
Public hearing and vote on number 20 is today. Proponents, please.
Hi, Kelsey Slobotsky, 10624 South 190th Street, Omaha 68136, owner of the real estate and business.
Okay, thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed. There's a motion and a second to approve. Roll call.
Hug. Johnson. Melton.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
Thank you.
Consent agenda. Any member of the City Council may cause any item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be taken up by the City Council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed, unless otherwise provided by the City Council Rules of Order.
The public hearings on agenda items 21 through 36 were held on July 23rd. I don't see any further lights. Is there a motion?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve. Before I call roll, council members, I'll just have short remarks on number 35. We discussed the bond issues last week in public hearing. On this particular one, I asked some follow-up questions that day that I didn't think were entirely clear during the public hearing, but I did have a follow-up meeting with both the Finance and Public Works departments that I think confirmed what I was looking for, which is these are $72 million worth in bond proceeds that would be authorized to do additional road construction throughout the city. And my question at the time was, is this sufficient to continue an enhanced commitment to our road construction needs as approved by voters in 2020? As you recall, voters approved $200 million at that election. And then in 2022, they also approved $120 million worth of bonds. And that's why adding these bonds in 2024 for $72 million does in fact add up to adding another $200 million approximately to our street needs over that time frame. So we have in fact followed through with our commitment to add about $40 million worth of work per year from that initial bond issue 2020 through 2024, as long as we continue that work this year. And I think it's up to us to make sure that does in fact occur. And then should voters approve this in November, this additional $72 million, it will allow an additional $40 million per year approximately from years 2025 to 2029. So that's why I support this today. I think it's important we continue to prioritize our streets and our roads, which we all know need it badly, and will get us more towards that ultimate goal of about $70 to $75 million per year being spent to address those needs and improve our road system throughout the city. No further lights. Roll call.
Hug. Johnson. Melton. Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
Council members, number 43 was already taken off and addressed in our meeting today. We've had a request to remove number 44 from the consent agenda. So first, we have the public hearings on agenda items number 39 through 42. If you wish to address the City Council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by name, address, and who you represent, and if you are a proponent or an opponent, these are items numbers 39 through 42, or 37 through 42, I'm sorry. 37 through 42. Seeing none, public hearings are closed. Mr. Harding, you're recognized.
Thank you. Austin, I just had a quick question. I was going to try to catch you at pre-council, but if you wouldn't mind coming up, had a question on 38, which is the street scan and street logics software. Is that an enhancement of Payzer? Does it work with Payzer, or is it not even affiliated with what Payzer does?
It's a good. Austin Rouser, Public Works. It's a good question. So it's an assessment tool. It uses uses an AI through camera imagery to return pavement assessments for us. And so with, one of the reasons why we've used the Payzer system in the past is because it's a visual where I can go out and rate a street a 4 and you can go out and rate a 5, and we're only going to be one off. Using an AI with an algorithm to run that, we're probably going to switch mostly away from Payzer, except in those areas where we have some kind of a policy or an ordinance that calls out for Payzer, which obviously is part of our substandard street program, but we'll probably go to a PCI or a pavement condition index, which is industry standard.
Okay, and so Payzer kind of gets phased out over time, maybe?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you. So how frequently will this scanning take place?
Yeah, so there's an initial scan that the company who provides the software will do. As far as follow-up scans, we will, one of the reasons why we like this particular software is they call themselves data agnostic. They don't care if they scan it or if we bring data from another scan, whether it's cameras in our trucks or any other kind of imaging system that we bring to the table. So we have the option to run as frequently as we want. The company will do an initial scan for us and feed that information directly into the system that gives us the pavement management system. But following that, we can run it as frequently as we want. Currently, we're doing pavement assessments on arterial and collector streets annually, and we're on about a 3-year cycle for local streets.
So someone could call in and request that this be ran, and they could expect what type of turnaround?
Yeah, anytime somebody wants, if somebody wanted a one-off condition assessment of their street, we could do that within a couple of days.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. There's no further lights. Is there a motion on 37 through 42?
Move the approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Hug.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Melton.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley.
Aye.
Harding. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 44, a resolution to approve the professional services agreement with the University of Nebraska to provide the city's 5-year poverty elimination action plan.
Public hearing on number 44 is today. Proponents, please.
Good afternoon, Council President Festerson, members of the City Council, Kaylin DeHelius, Director of the Human Rights and Relations Department for the City of Omaha, here in support of this resolution and ask you to align with this contract with the University of Nebraska at Omaha. As you all are likely aware, Omaha has to come up with a plan to eliminate poverty as a result of the passing of LB 840 in the legislature. And so our path forward, our proposed path forward, is through partnership with UNO. We believe this is the right choice, with UNO as a public institution that's very capable of gathering the data necessary to conduct a needs assessment, both from hard data and numbers that UNO already has access to, and from the insight of community members. Something pretty special about the University of Nebraska Omaha is that they've been awarded the President's Higher Education Community Service Honor Roll, or been placed on that honor roll for 7 consecutive years. It's the highest federal recognition a school can receive for civic engagement. And so just want to highlight that because I understand there's a need for a lot of community engagement as the City of Omaha embarks upon this plan. And I believe that UNO will balance that requirement with the data requirements to accomplish what needs to be accomplished. Specifically, we're going to partner with the Center for Justice Research, Dr. Ryan Spahn, and a couple of others from his team. They are within the College of Public Affairs and Community Service at UNO. And so our preliminary plan is articulated throughout the contract, but essentially the first steps are to start gathering data to conduct the needs assessment and a report of where we are in Omaha when it comes to poverty. UNO would plan to send out a survey to different community organizations that are focused on eliminating or alleviating poverty to get their insight about programs that are out there, the effectiveness of those programs, what gaps there might be, and what other community organizations should be providing feedback on this issue. We really want to be inclusive with this outreach, and we'll make a point of doing that. And so as members of the public or council members have ideas about where we should be reaching, please send them to me. I'm happy to receive them and make sure those organizations are included in this outreach. So we'll go ahead and do a survey. UNO will meet with some community organizations. They'll meet with some city departments and also get a sense of city programs that are focused on eliminating poverty And then come the fall, we'll do some community outreach events in partnership with UNO to get the insight of the community on the needs assessment, where the needs assessment shows that the root causes of poverty lie, and then what solutions the city collectively should be suggesting and recommending in this action plan. It's a 5-year action plan, so it's something that we'll plan this year. We'll revisit it every 2 years as the bill requires, and then provide and update the plan, I guess, in 5 years.
Okay.
So I'd ask you to support this. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any other proponents today?
Mr. President, members of council, Keith Station, Mayor's Office, here as a proponent for item number 44. The university is the right partner. I think that research and analysis will yield a very useful action plan and would encourage your yes vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Other proponents? Seeing none, go ahead.
My name is Marcus Bell, and I'm the CEO of Omaha Bridges Out of Poverty. And I am a proponent of this act as well, and look forward to seeing what the plan has in hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Other proponents to number 44? Seeing none, any opponents?
Anthony Cato Jr., 2596 Crown Point Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska. I'm a little concerned. I guess I'm kind of neutral in part, but I'd like some clarification. According to the news last night, the contract or agreement with UNO for this program was to be $24,000 with a 1 year, actually 6 months report review due to the city or the city council by the end of the year, according to the news organization. Now, there's a couple concerns that I have, and the first one's going to be this. Do we actually need another study on poverty? The answer is no. We see it every day in our communities. We see people standing on corners, buses, and on street corners in the median, begging for food or saying they will work for food or give us donations. And we hear people like the people from the Omaha Open Door Mission, Miss Gregory, I believe is her name. She says, don't give to those people. Give to us so we can help them go further. We also see how CHI Health Center proposed a $40,000 grant to help people who are coming out of prison to reintegrate into the system, which is also part of the poverty thing. So do we actually need another study? The answer is no. We know what some of the answers are. We need more jobs. We need more mental health counseling. We need places for them to go to. One of the places I'd like to see is in Mr. Bagley's neighborhood. Are familiar with Mr. Bagley, I'm sure, of the old Mid-City building, hospital that used to be Bergen Mercy at one time, at 515 Dewey. There's 2 buildings right there that are completely empty, have been there for almost a decade, and that could be revitalized and put people in those and give them programming and assistance to get back out into the community. Are we misguiding ourselves in this ability that we have solutions that we could actually apply today without getting another study? Because we all see it. We're not blind to it. You see people pushing baskets up and down the street. You see people laying on the street corners, staying in front of businesses. We don't need a study for that. We need solutions. And the solution is, how do we get more mental health professionals to give to those people in need? How do we stop food insecurity by we have many pantries around the city on an everyday basis that are giving food to them every week, every month. So we can do little things and make it even better. We should be recruiting more mental health professionals. We should be providing a space for people to go in, revitalize their lives by staying in these buildings that we could redevelop, have some housing assistance programs, community action programs, state programs, and we can also, believe it or not, which is what the governor is proposing, we can cut some of our property taxes and make people more responsible and valuable citizens to our community. I applaud what UNO is trying to do with their civic engagement, but we don't need a contract because they can have students who pay their tuition to learn about this each and every day. That's what they go to school for. We should be recruiting them to do that at no cost to the cities and taxpayers and say, hey, that's your solution. Let's make it go forth and go and be better. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents to number 44?
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. I am opposed to this ordinance. I'm opposed to a contract. But most of all, and I agree with this gentleman quite a bit, most of all, I disagree with the apparent language in not just this body, but in the morning body called the Douglas County Board. There is a use of language that for those of us that pay attention to things on a national basis, that is referred to as cultural Marxism, written about by Mr. Mark Levin, a very well-known attorney and author, but talked about on a lot of talk radio shows. This city has even hired a DEI coordinator, and we pay that DEI coordinator to, I guess, what do you call it, brainwash the city employees and everything to all the DEI principles. But you're doing so at the expense of the taxpayers, just like what this gentleman said. It's okay for us to try and solve mental illness and hunger, but not at my expense. I don't think there's enough mental health experts as is. And what are we going to do, which you guys need to decide and talk about maybe today, because it's a fact that the borders are overrun with illegals, people that are not healthy, people that have been released from prisons, people that have been released from insane asylums because their governments don't want to take care of them. Send them here, and these people will. Well, what are you going to do when you don't have the money this gentleman was talking about, or these people want, for your own citizens, because you're giving so much to the others? Our government, with the help of the United Nations and national partners called 501c3s, et cetera, with their best practices on mental health, et cetera, are putting up all these illegals and giving them benefits that are going to be taken away from these other people. The citizens that's supposed to be here, supposed to be talking two ways with you. But you and the Douglas County Board and the state does not allow that. That's unconstitutional.
Larry, you're wandering off
Okay?
topic here. You got to stick to
Thank
the
you.
poverty plan. All right.
Unconstitutional.
Any other opponents to number 44?
Thank you, Mr. President. Anthony Carifa, Rogers Right, 3010 Lincoln Boulevard. I'm flummoxed about how a discussion in reducing poverty has been reduced to mental health, and in a way that is stigmatizing mental health. I'd remind my dear gentleman that poverty impacts people of all races. It is not just Black, brown, and indigenous people. We have plenty of poor white people in our esteemed city, and we also seek to help them as well. To that end, I'm wondering, as part of the input process, if the potential partners will be looking at the impacts of the criminalization of poverty by law enforcement officials, and if that furthermore will include the elimination of cash bail, which also criminalizes poverty to boot. So I would say that, like, I'm not so much of an opponent of this, but what I am concerned with is, much like the very, very milquetoast climate action plan, that it's just going to remain a set of words and not get turned into ordinances like the ordinance we're going to talk about later. So I would hope that the City Council would ask our esteemed colleagues who came today about some of those questions. But let's please not resort to closet white supremacy ideology and racism when we're talking about poverty, when we do know that white supremacy and racism, as well as capitalism, as well as runaway unfettered checks on businesses and a living minimum wage, have more to do with poverty than a person's race, their background, or what nation they come from. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other opponents to number 44?
I'll say something. My name is Jason Odom. My address is 6411 South 106th Circle, Omaha, Nebraska 68127. I find the wording a little strange of elimination of poverty. Not even Christ tried to eliminate poverty in the world. He said that the poor will always be with you. So is it really trying to eliminate the poor from our community, or is it trying to feed and clothe and house these people? I don't know if maybe you can answer that question, but I find the wording especially troubling. Yeah, that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you. Other opponents?
Luis Jimenez, 2709 Dewey Avenue. I understand that this study is being is directed to you by the legislature, so I don't think I do think it's necessary to meet your obligation. My question is, how does the your focus on poverty elimination, which I think the city should be doing, isn't like what do you guys call it, like doubling services, because the county government is supposed to be taking care of the indigent, which are poor people. So as far as collecting data, I think the county officials, elected leaders, they probably have a good database of information about where poverty is. During the pandemic, the qualified citizens tracts were identified as areas to be concerned with. And then recently, the county board approved an AI contract. So the county has AI capacities, and probably so does UNO. So, but my position is just so that I can say what I'm saying and have you consider working closely with the county, not just with UNO, who's going to be doing the study during this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other opponents? Public hearing's closed. Ms. Milton, was your light on, I think?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. No, and I just, thank you, Louis. I just did want to, I appreciate that you understand that we're directed by the legislature. So whether we agree with this or not, it doesn't matter. This is an unfunded mandate that the city of Omaha was required to do by the legislature. So even if we disagree with the language that the legislature used, or we think different words should be used, or we think a different focus should have been had, that time has passed because the legislature passed LB 840. So now this city is required, or we would be in violation of state law, to actually have a plan to eliminate poverty. I have to say, when I saw this, and I saw that most of our plans, if you look back, we're paying anywhere from $250,000 to $300,000 or more. And so when I saw that UNO was going to give us what they're giving us, they're going to get the data, they're going to use their students, and we're going to use professors, and we're going to have this, and the total amount was basically we're paying up just a portion of their salary for the work that they're doing of $24,000. We aren't going to get a cheaper study than that. And when I look at the quality of this study that we're going to get with the amount of data that UNO is using, I'm an alum of UNO, of their political science department, so I can speak from experience that I do think they do an excellent job at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. And I've seen the work that they do. So I actually thought this was really good. I think the plan, and at least the agreement, it's very open. It's not limited to anything. And I think what the plan is they first look at the community and let's talk about all these different areas, and let's talk about who's affected, and let's see who it is. So I think they start with a really broad kind of assignment, so to speak. And so if we're mandated to do this by the legislature, I think this was the best choice we could make under that mandate. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harding?
Yes, actually, I think Juanita's light was on before mine, so I'd like to let Ms. Johnson go first, and I'll follow.
Okay, Ms. Johnson, you're recognized.
Thank you. But Mr. Harding, you can go ahead and go.
Mr. Harding, the floor is yours.
Couple things. So LB 40, to Mr. Cato's comments, was the reason we're doing this. I don't disagree. We all know there's poverty that exists, but like we were tasked to come up with the affordable action housing plan required by the state. That's what LB 840 does in this regard. And then Mr. Odom, to your comment too about the elimination of poverty, we have a program called Vision Zero too, which is to completely eliminate death by, for pedestrians and motorists. And in reality, we know that's not ever going to get to zero. And like this, we will never completely eliminate poverty, but it is a goal to set forth. It is obviously a stretch goal, but that's really what we're here and tasked to do is to do the study, like we did with the Affordable Housing Action Plan, get community input, put that together, file it with the state, and then, like other studies in the past that maybe get put up on the shelf and never really kind of looked at again or implemented, there will be a 2-year review process, and it'll become a living document, and we will have something in place that helps it, because things will change along the way as well. And this gives you the flexibility and the ability to make those alterations, those amendments, those changes to address poverty going forward.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, are you in the queue? Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank everyone for coming up and expressing your needs and desires regarding the issue regarding poverty. Poverty is a real huge issue in our community, and it has been for a number of years. And so I think the sentiments that everyone shared when they came up was that we have been studied enough, and now action is needed. So at this time, I would like for Kaylin, if you would please come up. I'd have a few questions regarding what is our task.
Sure. Yes, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you. Can you please be clear and specific regarding the task before us as it relates to the bill? Does it specifically require that we do a study?
Kaylin DeHelios, Director of the Human Rights and Relations Department for the city. I'm just piecing to the bill itself so I can read it. The bill itself requires a needs assessment, which is a comprehensive needs assessment to identify challenges in housing, education, healthcare, employment, access to capital, economic development, and social services in target areas. It requires community engagement and data analysis, utilizing data and research to understand root causes of poverty and measure the impact of interventions. So, and I'll say one more point. It also requires a report detailing the city's efforts to eliminate poverty, which encompasses the 2 elements or components that I highlighted, as well as a handful of other components. So it requires a data analysis, community engagement, and a needs assessment, which I don't think needs to be named a study necessarily, but yes, it requires us to dive in and come up with articulating the root causes of poverty, where we are now, and where we're going to be pointing.
And so we are doing a study to satisfy the requirement of a needs assessment. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Also, there was some more conversations about will the analysis, when we look at the analysis of doing the study, collecting the data, will we get some information on police impact?
Dr. Ryan Spahn is the director of the Center for Justice Research at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, so he focuses on criminal justice. So I anticipate he would fold in a lens related to criminal justice in his review and plan.
And earlier today in our discussion, we had mentioned something about a map. Do you have that map so that we can have a visual to see what area that we will be focusing this study on?
I have a map. Oh, I think I do. One moment, please. have a map, but it's hard to see because it's overlapping in the act. The city needs to focus on areas that meet 3 different definitions, and so this map highlights a number of areas and distinguishes which definition each meets. So I'm happy to show it, but it might not be very easy to see.
Would it be easier for you to just kind of give us a boundary or some street cross points, things
Sure.
like that?
Sure. So it looks like the northern boundary, there are a couple of clusters, but the biggest cluster is north and southeast Omaha, right? So the northern boundary is just north of McKinley Street. 72nd Street is the boundary sort of in the north with a couple of exceptions. And then the southern boundary goes down to south of L Street. The street's not identified, so I can't see exactly what street it is. And it goes all the way to the eastern edge of Omaha.
Okay. And we also had another important question that I thought that bubbled up, and that was that the Douglas County is, that is their charge, that's their responsibility overall in the city, is to help us take care of mental health and things of that nature. But we also know that there is a direct correlation with mental health and poverty. Sometimes they often blend together. And so the question was, they had already done some study regarding mental health. Will we be working with the Douglas County to look at their data as we compile all of the information, and will they also be a partner in this process?
We will be looking at the data they have, and we hope that they'll be a partner. We haven't started working with them yet.
And speaking of partners, I would assume that you've already identified some partners. Would you mind providing us a list of who they are?
I do not have a list of partners or proposed partners with me. We've started brainstorming, but really welcome insight from the community and ask people to let us know who they think are important for us to engage with, and we'll certainly engage with those organizations.
So for communities that are impacted and they want to lend a helping hand in terms of identifying partners, they would reach out to you to give you that information?
Yes, they can email me. I can state my email into the record if that would be helpful.
That would be, thank you, appreciate that.
My email is kaylin.dailydehelius@cityofomaha.org. It's CAILIN.DAILYDEJILLAS@cityofomaha.org.
Okay. And then there was another question, and that was, what is our real goal? You know, what is our true intentions? Is it in fact to reduce poverty?
Absolutely. My goal is to come up with some actionable solutions that the city can implement, whether it's a combination of community organizations and city efforts, however it might play out, depending on what we learn and what everyone recommends, to have actionable steps to take to ultimately eliminate poverty, but certainly chip away at it over the next 5 years and keep making progress.
So can I conclude that when this study is completed, we will perhaps see some data information published to the community to see what that looks like, and then maybe even some action steps as to what we plan to do with the information collected?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'll support this today too for a few reasons. One, as has been noted, it is required of the city to do this. The bill was actually introduced by Senator McKinney, and I support what he's trying to do, I think, which is to focus cities on poverty reduction. And so whereas I don't disagree with some of the testimony that this is something we should already be doing and be doing anyway with action steps, that is a requirement, and I do support him in the respect that I think he's trying to get us focused on these solutions, and I appreciate that. When we know economic disparities and poverty is some of the biggest challenges in our community, and when we have a public school system that has free and reduced lunch rates of 70, 75%, sometimes greater, we know this is a major issue in our community we should be addressing. My only challenge is, and has been stated here already, is we need to get on to the action steps. I talked about this the last couple of weeks when we did talk about bike and pedestrian plans, and I'm encouraged by our climate action plan in its final stages now, and that'll come to the council in the next week or two. I'm encouraged by what was included in the Affordable Action Housing Plan. I think that's a very important one too. But they're only as good as where we're going to take them with action steps, and I think that needs to happen in all three of those cases, and definitely need to happen here, so that's what I'll be looking for. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a question from Larry, and Larry, if you don't mind, can you be brief and can you limit your comments to 2 minutes, and then Mr. Cato, if you would come up after. Thank you.
Thank you. Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. I'm getting a little bit weary of you people passing the buck back to the state legislature. It's always their fault, and you guys are scared about what they're doing down there this year. But you pay a lot of money, and so does the Douglas County Board, to a consultant that you send down there to lobby for you. Not necessarily for us, but for you. You can cut that out of the budget to help pay for mental health. The second item, on mental health. Not every mental health expert is an expert. There's a conflict of interest there, meaning the pocketbook. There's a checklist for everything. There's a checklist for me. In fact, there was a citizen who let me know one time that they overheard you guys comparing me to a checklist, and oh, we don't like that guy. Overheard it on the video. He had a checklist on it for a shirt that I wore. Oh, your shirt is offensive. So, you know, mental health is in the eye of the beholder and the guy with power. And I have a grandson that's now 25 years old with disabilities. I know a hell of a lot more about it than the experts do, mainly because they don't want to listen. They have their DSM-4 with their checklists. Oh, gee, I drove down Lurie Street the other day and he flies his flag upside down. We need to send the mental health coordinator out to his office, to his home, because he has an illness. And you're spending money on that through the city police out of my pocket, and I don't like it. Stop it.
Thank you. Mr. Cato.
Anthony Cato, 2596 Crown Point Avenue. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge what Mr. Hardigan said, and he's correct in some of what he said, and also what Ms. Milton said. You're required by the legislature to have a plan. Now, we all have studied, and we know what a plan is. That means it's something that you're going to do today. We don't need a study to have a plan. We need to have action, period. Mr. Hugg, Mr. Bagley, Mr. Fesserson, Ms. Johnson, you live in a community where you see homeless people each and every day at an intersection between Cummings, Dodge, 30th, Farnham, Leavenworth, every day. And sometimes it's the same folks. Sometimes they're pushing a basket. Well, one of those baskets was probably taken from a grocery store. I'm not saying you need to lock them up, but there is a statute or a city ordinance that says that you can't take one of those. We can do something about that. We can do an intervention right then and there. And it doesn't have to be criminalized. It says, we recognize that you need help. We recognize that there's some kind of trauma, PTSD, or even mental health, homelessness, hunger. We know that. We don't need a study. We see it. It's right there. So what's the plan? Do something about it. Take action. When I said Mr. Bagley, and I'm not trying to pick on you, but when I'm looking at mid-city, right next to Lasting Hope. Then I go up to that community and see there's a hospital. That was an operating hospital with at least 200 empty rooms that can be revitalized to put people in to give them another chance at life. We know that mental health can't truly be cured, but we can curtail it by counseling and medication and assistance to let somebody know, hey, we're here to help you, help yourself. We also know that there's every time you go down a certain street, you see a lot of signs, help wanted, retraining there. We also have been pushing community colleges to restaff people to give them jobs in plumbing, electrical, HVC. We see that every day as well. So do we need a study? I understand that you have to have a plan by the legislator that he called for, and I'm agreeing with that. But you don't need a study, you need action. And that requires the plan to be put forth so you can try to reduce poverty and you can reduce taxes. And I can tell you this, we the people will be much more appreciative of that than saying, let's have another study. Because if I'm a college student, which I was, I've taken classes out at UNO, and one of the things they teach you, you give back to the community. You don't need to have a study because you're paying to get that education to do just that. Period. Let's do action. Put the plan to work. Let's try to bring the numbers down. Let's try to help those people that are standing out there with no shirts on, talking to the sky, that need help, that need food, that need housing, that are not living under bridges, sleeping on concrete. The United States Supreme Court just made it easier for you to arrest a person who's sleeping on the sidewalk. That should be criminalized. And when I say criminalized, why would you arrest a person who's sleeping outside? Because they have no place to go? The city of Omaha just put more money into San Francisco with a new project that they're building right down off of 16th Street. The Steffen Center out in South Omaha has asked for more money to do more programs there. That's a plan. We don't need a study to fix something that we already know it's broke. We need to do something about it. That's all I'm asking. And I think the citizens are asking the same. Yes, Ms. Johnson.
Oh, no.
Thank you.
Caitlin, if you could please come back up, please. You heard Mr. Cato's passionate discussion regarding a plan. Could we forego this study and utilize the information that we already have? As we discussed earlier in our conversation, there is data that we can use, and that way we can move this process along a lot quicker. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, we have the community experts. We have people in our community that could help us facilitate creating a plan so that we could move, again, faster at getting to the root resolution and reducing poverty.
Caitlin DeHelius, Director of the Human Rights and Relations Department. Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. I think whether it's a needs assessment or a study, it's playing with semantics, right? The requirements of the legislative bill are that we can conduct a needs assessment, analyze data, create a report, and then make a plan based on that. And so absolutely, there's a lot of data readily available, and there's a lot of data from community organizations. And what UNO is going to do is take that and put it all together so we have it in one place, and we can point to the root cause of poverty, align on that through these community stakeholder meetings to make sure, hey, we're all aligned with this, and then go to solutions. So it's as you see in the resolution, we're aiming for a timeline that ends this year to have everything put together this year. We're not intending to make this last until the timeline is due, or until this report is due, or action plan next July. We're looking to really get ahead. So to me, the work is necessary because although that data is out there and exists, someone needs to assemble it. And so that's what UNO is going to do, in part.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Ms. Melton.
No, I think that was a good point that you just made. And I went back just to see, there is nothing in the statement of work that says study. So somebody called it a study, but it says it's an agreement to perform a needs assessment, data collection, community engagement, and research services to the city of Omaha for the purpose of producing a plan. So they're really just coordinating with everybody and taking all the data that they have and that others have and compiling it together. So actually, I don't see anything in here that says it is a study. It's how they're coming up with a plan. So I think with that, it probably makes everybody happy, the opponents and proponents, because it's not a study. We're just putting together a plan that will help us come up with actionable solutions that I think everybody wants. So I appreciate the speed in which this is going to happen too, because usually these things go on and on. So I think this is very aggressive and can be done with a lot of people, like I said, at a lot lower cost than I've seen any other type of consultant that we've had before. Here, we're not using a consultant. We're using the University of Omaha, University of Nebraska in Omaha, and their students, who I think will probably be providing the information and doing a lot of the work for free, and also learning from it. So I do think that this is really good for us as a result, and in response to the law that was passed. We're not passing the buck to the legislature passed it.
Thank you, Mr. Rupp.
I've got a great segue into that. I'd like to ask Matt, I mean, what are the consequences of not abiding by a mandate from the state legislature? What if we said, no, we're not going to do this? What's the consequences to the city?
Matt Kuzi, City of Omaha Law Department. I think the consequence could be that we would be found, not in compliance with LB 840 and the requirements that are set forth on us. The state could take action against us. They could file a lawsuit against us to compel us to do it, which would result in additional costs in that fashion. There could also be other punitive steps that the legislature could take in the future with regard to any type of state funding or state aid that we get. They could use that as, hey, look, Omaha doesn't comply with the things that we tell them to do. That could have an effect on future appropriations for the legislature. But the looming concern would be some sort of litigation to have some basically court order to compel us to do it. And when a court order is done, we don't have the flexibility, I would say, in coming up with our own plan as opposed to one that a court would force upon us.
Okay, thank you. That helps me a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no further lights. Is there a motion?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve. Roll call.
Hug. Yes. Johnson. Yes. Melton.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Yes. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 45, an ordinance to provide that the City of Omaha be authorized to issue and sell general obligation bonds in the amount not to exceed $14.5 million for environmental sewer projects. A's amendment of the whole requested by the Public Works Department.
The vote on number 45 is today. It was not on consent agenda because it requires an amendment of the whole.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. No further lights. Roll call.
Hug. Yes. Johnson. Yes. Melton.
Yes.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 46, an ordinance to approve a street name change in North Streams Replat 1 from J Street to I Street. Planning Department recommends approval.
Public hearing on number 46 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 47, an ordinance to approve an agreement with the Omaha Botanical Center for the operation and maintenance of Lauritsen Gardens.
Public hearing on number 47 is today. Proponents, please.
Mr. President, members of the City Council, Matt Kalsevich, Parks and Recreation Director, here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any other proponents?
Good afternoon, President and Council. I'm Ennis Anderson. I'm the CEO of Lauritsen Gardens, 100 Bancroft Street, Omaha. So this agreement strengthens the unique partnership between the garden and the city. As the relationship grows, as the city and the garden grow together with the community, it helps us serve it better in a meaningful and authentic way. Our ultimate goal is to become treasured locally and distinguished nationally. And when we think about what the vision is for the garden, it's to become the world-class botanic garden for the Great Plains.
region to provide memorable experiences for all, everybody. So any questions? Thank you, and nice to meet you all.
Thank you. Welcome. Any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponents?
Yes, sir. Donnie R. Johnson, the Johnson Equestrian Foundation, and North Omaha Concerned Citizen Foundation. And Mr. Frederickson, I thought it was only me and you went to the University of Nebraska, Omaha. So I guess Mrs. Smelton as well. But at Business College, I recommend that you send this to Botanical Garden Survey that you're speaking of, to the University of Nebraska Business College to make sure that medical marijuana should be applied to this program.
All right, Donnie. Any other opponents to number 47?
I'll talk again. My name's Jason Odom again, 6411 South 106th Circle. I just have a question how funding the botanical garden will interplay with the climate action plan. Is there any, sorry, where's the CEO at? I lost him. I'm just curious, like, are they going to be growing seeds that we can then provide to our citizens to help them grow their own gardens, or having a nursery for the baby trees that we have to plant all over the city that we can feed ourselves? Like, how do those two things play together? So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents to number 47? Public hearing is closed. Matt, I might just ask you one question. I'm supportive of this. I think it is obviously a worthy entity in our city that attracts lots of visitors and income throughout our city and revenue to our city, in addition to being a quality of life amenity, I think, for all citizens. But there's lots of those in the city, right? And there's only a few by which we have a multi-year agreement with, like is being proposed here. And I think a distinguishing thing about, say, the zoo or Lawrence Gardens is that we still own some of that property. Some of that property is city-owned, which I think is part of the thought here, right?
Yes, Matt Kalsovich, Parks and Recreation Director. You're exactly right. There is a significant portion of the land that the Botanical Garden sits on that is city, or in this case, park property. And so we have the privilege, the honor of, excuse me, serving as the liaison and the direct connection from the city to the operations of the Botanical Garden. This is essentially the reactivation or the extension with the new iteration of the funding support, similar to what we provide to the zoo on a measurable scale in regards to economic impact to the city. The previous agreement expired and we landed on this new iteration. And it is actually a step forward in terms of our connectivity. We will have representation on the board for the gardens as we do for the zoo. So it's really strengthening and growing our relationship. As Mr. Anderson mentioned, it's really the next step as far as us really becoming true partners, stronger partners than we've already been.
Okay. Thank you. And I do want to welcome the new director to Omaha, too. We look forward to working with you. Mr. Hug, you're recognized.
Mr. Anderson, come back down, please. Good afternoon, Mr. Anderson. We've had the privilege of already meeting, but I thought I would give you the opportunity to tell the rest of my city council colleagues about your background, how you ended up in Omaha.
So after about 15 years of hotel management, I got into the world of public gardens because I really love nature from my time of being a Boy Scout. So when I started in public gardens, I started out as the CFO of the Fort Worth Botanic Garden. And, you know, grew with that. It became a municipal garden, and then we transitioned to a public-private partnership. So with Omaha being rated so highly of places for, you know, to raise a small family, it was important for me to find a place that my girls could grow up. So in public gardens, I went from CFO to COO, and then got prepared working with the city of Fort Worth and really turning that garden into a garden that's treasured by all. So I look to do the same for the Ritson Gardens here in Omaha.
Thank you, sir. Welcome to Omaha.
Thank you. No further lights. Next up.
Item 48, an ordinance to approve and authorize special tax revenue redevelopment bonds, Series 2024, in the amount of $50 million.
Public hearing on number 48 is today. Proponents, please. Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 49, an ordinance to amend Section 5.16 of the Home Rule Charter to amend Article 5 Finance to increase the monetary amount which requires public bidding from $20,000 to $50,000.
The public hearing on number 49 is today. On these next two items, we'll have the Law Department give a brief summary of what they do since they are proposed charter amendments. Mr. Endenbosch, you're recognized.
Thank you, President, members of the City Council. Bernard Endenbosch, Deputy City Attorney. Obviously, what we have before you is an amendment to Section 5.16 of the Charter. This particular amendment was at the request of the Legislative Affairs Committee. As many of the council members know and many members of the public know, Section 5.17 of the Charter was amended in May of 2024, which increased the contract amount that needed City Council approval from $20,000 to $50,000. Somewhat related, but not part of that particular issue, was Section 5.16 of the Charter, which has language that requires public competitive bidding for contracts greater than $20,000, and in instances where contracts are publicly bid, it requires City Council approval for contracts that are $20,000. Obviously, that leaves a little bit of a discrepancy, so the result of this particular amendment is it would move the amount for competitive public bidding from $20,000 to $50,000, which would then also allow the competitively bid contracts would only need council approval if they're for an amount of $50,000 or more. So it aligns with the changes that were adopted by the voters in 5.17. This particular amendment was in the previous ideation of charter changes, but there were three in that particular one, and obviously we broke them up separately with 5.17 in May, and this addresses 5.16 in November if the council approves this ordinance.
Okay.
Thank you.
And accurate to say, unless this is approved, the previous item approved by the voters cannot be enacted?
No, that's not, I don't think that's fair.
Okay.
So there are any number of contracts that do not require public bidding. Professional services contracts, sole source, those types of contracts at this point don't come to this council unless they're an amount of $50,000 or greater based on the change. But there's a portion of those contracts that require competitive bidding that have to come to this council even though they're less than $50,000.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Any other proponents on number 49? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Next item.
Item 50, an ordinance to amend Section 2.05 of the Home Rule Charter to amend Article 2 to provide for situations for forfeiture of office by City Council, A's Communications, and opposition.
Public hearing on number 50 is today. Proponents, Mr. Endenbosch.
Thank you. President and members of the City Council, Bernard Endenbosch, Deputy City Attorney. This particular amendment was at the direction of the Law Committee, and it amends Section 2.05 of the Charter. That section of the Charter addresses removal of a City Council person, and obviously that issue came to a forefront with some of the issues that occurred a couple of years ago on the Council. This particular amendment proposes three changes to Section 2.05. The first one, if you're no longer a resident of the City Council district that you represent, you would now forfeit your position. Currently, that's not a requirement in order to remain on the City Council. Secondly, the current requirement is that you miss 3 consecutive months that are not excused in order to forfeit your City Council seat. This changes that requirement to 4 consecutive meetings that are not excused. So if your attendance is excused, you don't count towards the 4 consecutive meeting. And obviously that's an intention to ensure representation by people in the various districts, and maybe some of the delay that we saw the last time. The third provision concerns the potential to have a council member forfeit their seat if they violate a code of conduct that's adopted by the council. Now, that's contingent upon the council adopting a code of conduct. If no code of conduct is adopted, then that particular provision would not apply. If a code of conduct were adopted, then if 5 members of the City Council determine that the code of conduct was violated, and they also determine that removal from office is suitable action as a result, then that particular council member would be deemed to have forfeited their office. I understand that there's an item later on the agenda in which you'll discuss the merits of the code of conduct. That's not the issue before this particular council as far as this particular ordinance. And I do want to make one clarifying comment. The city code, executive order, city policy, all do apply to all city employees, including directors and others. They do not apply to elected officials, and I think that's the origin of some of the thought process. I know Mr. Kuzi, when we get to the code of conduct, will address the motivation for that in more detail. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other proponents?
Donnie R. Johnson, the Johnson Equestrian Foundation, and North Hall Concerned Citizen Foundation. You know, when I took political science at UNO, I had to take it over in the summer, because when I wrote my article in political science, the teacher didn't like it, so she made me take it over. So in the whole class in the summer, political science. There's a problem. This is a good process here, but the problem I have run into in my political science reviews, they have on this YouTube, Benny Palermo is asking Dan Welch and others, Frank Brown, well, he's passed away, God rest his soul, and Jim Bogle, to be brought before this council. I said, why? And then I look at this whole process. If Marion Barry, the mayor of Washington, D.C., who can get convicted and come back and run for the mayor, should Benny be allowed to come back and run for his seat for Mr. Kick? That should be put in this as well. If you get caught for smoking crack, you are not allowed to come back. But Marion Barry in Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States of America, was allowed to come back and get his seat. And I'm asking myself, a felony shouldn't be a problem then, should it? We'll get back to this gentleman here. We'll have to write the laws real strict, because I don't think Benny want to come back here with all this crazy behavior like Jim Bogle and Dan Welch. I told Dan Welch, we projected you to be to the Senate, but you was a disappointment. So I'm going to call my friends from Rome, Italy, and say, one of your sons needs to come home.
All right. Any other opponents to number 50? Or, am I still on proponents? I forget. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's still proponents. I'm sorry. Those in favor?
Ford Momarts Brown, 1511 Farnham, number 508. I think the last gentleman who spoke was right. This council should spend a lot of time taking on all the difficulties and problems of the entire world and work up a code of conduct that will cover all of that. And then you should bring it to a vote to address every single problem that faces the entire world. Of course, I'm being sarcastic. No, I think that, what is the source of these suggestions?
You have to speak to us at the moment.
The law committee?
Are you in favor of this number 50?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent idea. Despite my sarcasm, I think we need a code of conduct. Hopefully, the council will do a better job of it than the Supreme Court. But I also noticed in the case of Vinnie Palermo that there was some reluctance to remove a colleague, and so this seems to be addressing that reluctance that council members not wanting to remove a colleague, and if we can get by that, and so they won't have to feel shame or guilt, but the colleague who needs to be removed can still be removed. And I think some of the penalties need to be a little bit stiffer, but I really think this is an issue that needs to be addressed. The one thing that I would suggest be taken into consideration before a final vote on this is America has gotten itself hooked on the idea of impeachment and recall, and we have rejected our common law predecessors from the United Kingdom of a vote of no confidence. You don't have to convict somebody. You don't have to prove them guilty. If you don't have confidence that they can do the job, then simply vote no confidence and replace them with somebody in whom you can have confidence. I think that's an idea that we have sadly lost sense of, and we should consider that for this and other future endeavors. And that's all I have to contribute on this issue. Thank you for your time.
Other proponents to number 50? Seeing none, any opponents?
Anthony Cato, 2596 Crown Point Avenue. I'm a opponent of this particular one because I just feel that the city council, which is trying to govern itself with a code of conduct, that being all well and good and said, should have that done by the vote of the people. The people should have a direct say into a lot of the concerns that have been addressed by some of the other proponents. One of the things I look in particular is because if a council member is convicted of a crime or allegedly involved in a crime, duly it shouldn't take that long to have them removed from office. But let's say, for an example, some comments are made by a city council member towards a member of the city planning board, city attorney's office, city parks, recreation, city highway roads. That doesn't constitute detrimental of character or conduct. It just means they have a disagreement and they didn't approve of what that particular person was thinking. Does that mean they should be removed from office? If they weren't diplomatic in the way they described it, no. They're just they're speaking their frustrations. We all have everyday frustrations. I think the code of conduct has to be very succinct, and it should be a violation of not a detrimental of character, but of the law. And if you're going to do that and not follow procedures or parliamentary procedures, then there should be a reflection of that by a vote of the people. As the gentleman said, if you don't have a vote of confidence, then you vote them out of office. But you don't remove them because they were duly elected and their comments are duly respected, should be, even though they might be somewhat disrespectful to someone else, they might be applauded by someone else as well. That's called freedom of speech. And we can't stymie that in this city council meetings by saying a code of conduct says you can't do this, you can't say this, but on the other hand, you can get on TV and make comments about what you don't think is right in one part of the city, but you don't really apply that for other parts of the city. And I've seen that. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but I thought it was kind of offensive when I saw two city council members got on TV and talked about what they thought wasn't right for their community, but then turn around and say, let's let the market decide. Well, evidently somebody in that market must have decided that. But that was disrespectful to someone who says, hey, wait a minute, I didn't vote for that. I don't agree with that. Maybe that person should be removed. They can do that at the ballot box, not by 7 members of the city council. Thank you.
Thank you. Other opponents?
Luis Jimenez, 2709 Dewey Avenue. What I'm about to say, you've heard me say this before when you removed Vinny Palermo as vice president. You were gearing up to remove him as a council member. I think Mr. Kuzi said, well, we looked through the city charter and the codes, and there was only 2 ways to remove him. And that's if he misses 3 consecutive months, which that's what transpired. And then he said that he has to violate the ordinance on conflict of interest, which my position is that you have rules of order. You don't need the city charter. You don't need the codes to remove somebody as council member. You put it in your rules of order. That's where a removal of a council member belongs. You have accepted Robert's Rules of Order as a guide, or no, not as a guide, as a governing document to your proceedings when they're not specified. So look into the Robert's Rules of Order, elevate that language into to be placed on your Rules of Order as a section in your Rules of Order. I think that's the more appropriate way to go about it, because if you adopt this, you're going to be in the same situation where this council or a future council will say, well, there's only certain ways that we can remove somebody. Adopting this limits your ability to remove a council member, especially for unforeseeable circumstances. Ford made a good point that a vote of no confidence should suffice to remove a council member. And if you start explaining why you should be removing council members, then and then you remove them, the council member may have to take this council to court. And then what's the judge to do? A judge isn't going to reinstate a council member. The judge is going to want to be conservative and allow what's transpired to remain. So that's my suggestion: is nix this charter change and stick with your rules of order. Stick with standard procedures of deliberate assemblies that use procedure in the rules to remove one of their members. Thank you.
Thank you. Other opponents?
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. I'm opposed to this, particularly because of the code of conduct business. You're taking away one of my rights, which is to vote for my representative. I can't vote for or against every one of all 7 of you. I can only vote for or against one of them. But all 7 of you are going to vote against me when it comes to whether a mayor should be replaced or a city council member should be replaced. Unconstitutional, ladies and gentlemen, and a waste of taxpayer funds. Now, I've noticed that screen back there has a 20-second delay, so anything we say might not get out to the public. Have you paid attention? There's 20 seconds delay on that screen from the time I get out of my chair to it appears on the screen. So what is it that you edit? A few months back, I caught the Douglas County Board editing some stuff out of my comments, so why not this when you have a 20-second delay? And it's YouTube probably. I've stood up here and watched the behavior between you people and Juanita when you didn't like something that Juanita said or wanted to say. And I've watched you grimacing, squirming in your seats. I'd like to remove some of you for that, but I can't. I can only remove one. But then I'm only one out of so many voters. That doesn't work, does it? Declaration of Independence says that when your government doesn't, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it is your right, your duty to alter, change, abolish, replace, and reinstitute it. It doesn't say a revolution, but it applies to this board as well as the county board and as well as the state legislature. And I agree with a local person, a Nebraska person that has run for and been defeated at office a couple of times, so he does have standing, that the parties in the state is a uniparty. It's not only a unicameral, but a uniparty. You're all in it together to preserve your own power. And this has got to change because you're supposed to be listening and talking back and forth with the citizens, me and that gentleman, even him. You don't make a lot of these kind of decisions on your own. That's for the citizens to have a part in, okay?
Thank you. Any other opponents?
Joe Fox, 461 Hartman Avenue. Good afternoon. I'm in opposition of this situation here. I think it's unnecessary. Like has been stated before me, these elected officials, if not deemed to do their job correctly, will be taken into the hands of the people at the ballot box. There's no need to have an elected official taken off of their post without being elected off of, in a sense. And I'm curious as to how the code of conduct will be created if it's just not by Milton, Bagley, and Harding, the law committee. Will that be voted on in November by chance? A lot of things that come up about Vinny and what should have happened with him, which didn't. And just the way a council member acts, know by a lot of these citizens, especially me that's new to this whole game, we weren't offended at all about what has gone on in here with flare of emotion. I mean, we are human, okay? Underneath all those fine fibers that humans made for you, you're still human underneath those clothes. So for somebody to act like a human in here with emotion and be disrespected, therefore, that's discriminatory, and that's against your fellow man, okay, against your fellow human, okay? Just because comments might have hurt your feelings or talked about your district and complained about the lack of representation in our district, my district, their district, and like I said, hurt your feelings, there's no reason as to why now we're creating some charter years after the Vinny situation, trying to remove an elected official. That will be done at the ballot box by not re-electing them. And just like will be done with this mayoral election. So this city count, this like he said, I'd like to remove some of you guys, and I can't, but yet you can remove my person that represents me. We only have that vote. And to make it a vote amongst each other and exclude the people is an injustice. We pay your salaries in this building. We all know you have other interests in other companies, okay? You work for us, and if given the opportunity to change stuff as a person, I would vote on these council meetings having to be started at maybe 6 o'clock. So all my buddies on the job site and all my people working these real jobs that pay a lot of taxes as well can attend these meetings.
We can't have applause or a reaction in the audience, please, while somebody's talking. Yeah.
So it's one of those things. Let's start at 2, because that's convenient for us. Us is who? We're us. That's what's convenient for the people is to be heard and represented appropriately by our voice and by our votes. And for you, council members, to create something to take our voice and our votes into your hands and be able to remove somebody that represents us, it seems unfair. I'll state this one more time. The removal of an elected official on this council should be done at the ballot box by the people.
Okay, thank you. Other opponents?
I'll try to be brief. Joe Higgins, 1110 East Camden Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska. You know, I've been coming to council for about 3 or 4 years, and I struggle with trying to get everybody together. And I agree with a lot of the opponents about constitutionality, free speech, voter rights. I just think there might be a better way we can accomplish working together. And don't get me wrong, I get frustrated, I get angry. I've learned that when I get angry, I shut up and I don't talk to you. You guys see me all the time. I'm not that angry yet, am I? But because I'll say something I regret. And if I have that kind of altercation, I would hope that we would do that in private, not in a public meeting such as this. So I would encourage more engagement outside of here, and I would like you not to prove this as proposed, because I don't think it's a step forward. I think it's an attempt for you guys to move forward, and I applaud what you're trying to do, but I oppose the code of conduct section. Thank you.
Thank you. Other opponents?
Good afternoon, Council. Andrew Adams, 2301 South 33rd Street. And I'd like to thank the previous speakers for sucking all the thunder out of my speech. So I don't know what the genesis of this is. Palermo was my former councilman, so if that's what this is about, so be it. But I would just, again, encourage everybody before voting, just slow down, take some time, and just consider the civic virtues of this ordinance. And I want to qualify my statements by saying you want to send this to this ordinance to a vote, which sounds good. You want the public to weigh in. And while that may seem like the small d democratic thing to do, does it also not create unintended consequences? So ask yourselves a couple questions here. Does the ordinance bypass other democratic means to resolve the issue, specifically the voter's voice to petition for a recall? Does the ordinance create authority or power that the city council should not have? And is the will of the voter really being protected? So I believe that this ordinance creates a solution in search of a problem. I believe the ordinance gaslights the public into believing that the second body, the people, are unable to solve problems that they may have with their elected official, and that only the city council can take the appropriate corrective action. So I just wanted to hit these real quick. It's not going to fit. The first item will provide that a member of the city council who is no longer a resident of the district in which they were elected forfeits their position. So all 6 of you campaigned for your seat on the dais. I'm sure none of you did that with the intention of then moving out of the district, but life comes at all of us from 100 different directions. There's any number of acceptable reasons why someone would want or need to move out of the district. But if the voters believe that their councilman or councilwoman cannot represent their interests because they're no longer live in the district, then they are able to pursue a recall. The real problem, as I see it, is that what becomes of the seat once forfeited under this ordinance. I didn't see anything about a special election. Are we just going to abandon representative democracy completely and continue this long streak of appointments? And I don't mean to be flippant here, but what are we on now? 3 in the last 10, 12 years? I honestly don't know the answer, but it's becoming a recurring issue. The second item will provide that a member of the city council forfeits their position if they are absent for 4 consecutive weeks. And I see how this has almost universal appeal, especially given recent history. But here's the thing, voters get the representative that they show up for. So let's look forward and not back. If we have a hypothetical future council member who is elected and then becomes derelict in their duty, we already have a democratic process to handle this through a recall. And then we get right back in to this appointment by fiat vacancy procedure, which nobody wants. The third item will provide that the city council will have deemed to have forfeited their office if 5 members of the city council determine that they violated the code of conduct adopted by the city council after a public meeting. So I find this one actually the most concerning, mostly because, for lack of a better example, 5 members of the council can effectively impeach, convict, and remove any other council member without any sort of check or balance. That seems to be missing a bit. And that's just not how things are supposed to be done. The concept appears rational, but 5 council members determining what's best for 60 to 70,000 residents of a district is not not the democratic process. So let me wrap up here. I've interacted with this body with this chamber more than 99% of the second body. So I feel confident but respectful in saying that sometimes this chamber forgets who works for who. As a member of, or as a citizen of the second body, I do not want to give the city council any more authority than it already has. But I can almost hear your thoughts here that, well, this ordinance doesn't interfere with the recall process, and I agree. So let's just be honest with the voters, and I would encourage you to kind of adopt more of a Hippocratic oath, first do no harm. Thank you.
Thank you. Other opponents? I think you already spoke on this item. You can't speak twice. Yep.
What if they convinced?
No. Yes.
In one, which is the next item. And then this one deals with really the charter change specifically. So I just wanted to make sure that those who are testifying here, so that they get the opportunity on the relevant item, have the opportunity to speak then and not have to repeat themselves.
Yeah, that is true. This is the charter amendment, but it does refer to a code of conduct, so it's not out of order to speak to it. But if you want to speak to the details of the code of conduct, that is the next item.
That was what I was trying to
Okay, Ms. Weston.
Thank you. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. Cheryl Weston, 1124 Pacific Street, Omaha, Nebraska. And what I say I'm not going to do is, I found your comments to be disrespectful to me as a citizen, to make that point of order. I think we are all intelligent to know what we are being an opponent or proponent about when we came down to this to speak. My comments, this letter serves as an opposition to the item, which I understand fully is 50, an ordinance proposing to amend Section 205 of the Omaha Rural Charter of the City of Omaha, updating the timing of the removal of city council members addressed by Section 2.5, removal from and forfeit of the office of council member. Sub-items 1 through 7, I can understand, and those can possibly be acceptable. Those were the items that were created by a city council member who was proven guilty of charges. I'm just so upset with you. However, the inclusion of 8 is unacceptable, and I strongly oppose it. This act has been dubbed the Vinnie Plumero Ordinance, and I would agree that that may be true for statements 1 through 7. However, let's be honest. Item 8 was requested by the Council Law Committee members Bagley, Harding, and Melton. They discussed this in their committee meetings for their sole purpose, because we need to be honest and upfront, because some of you know you're hiding behind it. Sole purpose of addressing respect and treatment of individuals, human beings, of each other. To address Councilwoman Johnson and the friction believed to be created between her and other members of the council. As one person from the audience said, we all get emotional because we have human feelings. Just as I have this human feeling right now, I'm trying to control. Some people are able to control those better than others. The handling of the friction is addressed in the Omaha Municipal Charter, and I've read it, looked it up, had discussions with law, so I know what I'm seeing and reading, because I'm capable of doing that, and should be handled by the president of the Omaha City Council president, just as other branches of the government the mayor and her cabinet, they are allowed to address the behavior of members of their staff. It was publicly stated that other cities have a code of conduct. So my question, does that necessarily make it right for Omaha, Nebraska to have a code of conduct? I'm sure there are a lot of things that they have code of conduct for, or have things that Omaha doesn't have and Omaha has that they don't have. I would like to point out, and I can be Google checked and fact, Omaha, Nebraska has had a city council since 1857 when it was first incorporated as a city. The current Omaha City Council is an elective legislative body that was established in 1956 when the city adopted its home rule charter. The charter established a mayor-council form of government with 7 nonpartisan council members serving for a 4-year term. What does that say about Omaha needing a code of conduct? 1857, 1956. Perhaps the reason you talk about a code of conduct, it is the current toxic mix of council members creating this fabricated need to have a code of conduct. This code of conduct is taking away the electoral choice, the citizens who elected each council member by the decision of a sitting council. This is a form of voter suppression. And folks who are watching this, and it goes on the record, this is only a first step. If this is passed, this is just a first step to suppress that vote. On the other side of city government, the mayoral, it is the people who have a right to remove their